Online Convention Town Hall. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you're all going to get to enjoy this experience. The whole thing should be recorded and available to watch later. I'm going to go through the candidates' names and ask them all to give you a brief introduction to themselves, and we'll be doing the same thing for how they're going to answer the questions. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer any individual question, and if they're mentioned by name by another candidate, they'll be given up to 30 seconds to respond. If they're not mentioned by name, they can attempt to respond as part of their 2 minutes for the next question. That'll be their judgment call. Let's go ahead and start having you guys give us some questions from the audience right off the bat so that we can transition to those as opposed to our pre-prepared ones as soon as possible. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Chris, go ahead and say hello.
Hi, my name is Chris Erickson. I'm a Christian Democrat, have been for over 10 years. I originally founded the Christian Democratic Union. That's now a dormant party. I'm here because I think I can, I'm going over time. I'm here because I think I can really help our group in getting the vote out and international organization, making alliances and
thanks,
joining those groups. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dane.
I'm Dane Garrett. I've lived my whole life in Maryland. I'm currently the treasurer for the Maryland chapter. I'll pass the rest of that off, as the introduction to everybody else and let it come back as questions later.
Go ahead, Efren.
I'm Ephraim Ben-Susan, and I am the chair of the Kentucky chapter of the American Solidarity Party. I'm here running for a national committee, and I thank you for your support today.
Go ahead, James.
Hi, I'm James Corkin. I am from the Alabama chapter. I think I'm currently the vice president, the vice president of that chapter. I was the co-chairman of the chapter, but some weirdness there. Anyway, I have some experience with the Republican Party here in Alabama, and I look forward to this town hall, and thank you for your consideration.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm Jim Klein. I'm currently a member of the National Committee, and I'm running to retain my position on it. I also serve as the treasurer of the party. That's my primary responsibility. I'm also an active member of our Washington chapter and was the initial organizer of the chapter. And I look forward to hearing the members' questions today.
Go ahead, Kimi.
I'm Kemi Ingram. I'm joining you from the Golden State, California, where I currently serve as vice treasurer and a local organizer in Riverside County. Thank you for your consideration.
And go ahead, Norm.
Good morning, Norm Schweenard, Naugatuck, Connecticut. It's really great to be with a really solid group of candidates, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion, and let's hope everybody enjoys the convention.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lillian.
Hi, did we skip over Skylar there?
No, we're still going to get them.
Okay. I'm Lillian Vogel. I am a current member of the National Committee as well. I was appointed I think it was December. I had been very active in Republican politics for about 10 years and was increasingly moving away from the party in a lot of my social view or sort of more my economic views. And they were moving away from me in the culture as well. And so I'm very happy to find a better home in the American Solidarity Party, and I'm asking for your vote to return me for another 2-year term on the National Committee.
Thank you. Go ahead, Skylar.
Hello, my name is Skylar Kovich, and I just recently earned my doctorate in political science from the University of California, Santa Barbara on the California coast. I am an incumbent member of the National Committee also, and I was the initial organizer and I'm the current vice chair of the California chapter. I'd really appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Skylar. Because I'm a selfish person and I want to hear all your answers to my own question, I'm going to start with it. The question is, given that we have a national organization currently, and we're trying to build state chapters and local chapters, how do you foresee transitioning us from this national grassroots organization to one that happens in our individual localities? In other words, taking subsidiarity from being something that we talk about to something we actually do. I'm going to go first to Skylar with this one.
Thank you, Matthew. I am the chair of the elections committee of the party, and I've also been working on state chapter development. And going off of my experience in California, I advocate starting local chapters, county chapters or regional chapters, as soon as possible in all states that have, say, over 30 or 40 members. So I've been appointing county coordinators in as much of California as possible. The process is still not complete yet, but we're working on it, and we have a few great ones. And I'm recommending that other state chapters do that as soon as possible, so that at that point, when a county has a coordinator, their state chair should be passing lists of new members onto them. So far, one problem we've had is that the response rate when state chairs or others in the state chapters send emails out to the members, the response rate is really low. But even a few people getting together to organize a county chapter is a good start. And so I think getting an early start on that really gets the energy up and shows that we're serious about not just being an online party, but also a local party.
Thanks, Skylar. Go ahead, Norm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. And it's a good question of how we implement our core values. Subsidiarity, to me, is a preference towards the more local and personal solution, and it does not prohibit what I would say is top-down type of approaches when the top-down approach clearly serves the interests of the local level. Subsidiarity takes it one step further, though, because and this part's often missed in government affairs. Subsidiarity never is completely comfortable with permanent top-down management, and it supports, even if it supports it in a case like this where we're growing so rapidly that we really need to have leadership from the top. So top-down management should be constantly re-examined and questioned at regular intervals. I'm looking forward to seeing whoever comes through this election process, because I think we have a really strong group of candidates, and I'm very optimistic about the party and how we'll be able to manage this level of management to make sure that people are much more important than the process. Thanks.
Thanks, Norm. Go ahead, Kimmy.
Following up on what Skylar said, I think that one of the ways to encourage subsidiarity in a national organization is by empowering local communities to effectively communicate, to be aware of the issues that are impacting their communities and the ways in which ASP principles, which have been articulated at the national level, can be applied to those local situations. As an organizer for Riverside County, one of the first things that I did was to set up the Facebook page for our community. I think that encouraging this amongst the local groups is important, and also taking that offline to have relationships where people meet face to face and discuss those issues that impact them. I think that having an effective feedback loop between the national and the local is very important, so that we can hear those stories coming out of local communities, stories in which people have applied or are trying to apply ASP principles and values in their locales.
Thank you, Kimmy. Go ahead, Jim.
This is a really critical question, and I don't think it lends itself to a simple answer. It's not either do you start things at the ground level, at the most local level, or are things at the national level. It needs to be both. We're a startup political organization, and as part of that, we need a very strong branding message. We need a very solid strategy for communicating that branding. And we also need to have very active, energized local chapters. One of the things national committee members, I think, really ought to do is become very involved in their national chapters, because that's the best way national committee members can learn what are the challenges and needs and interests of those local chapters. I've been involved in that, helped start up our own Washington chapter, and got a firsthand look at how to grow a chapter. There's a lot of challenges involved. I think Skylar's indicated some good ideas for adding regional chapters within states. That becomes very important, but we really need good leadership at the top and a good strategy at the top to do that.
Thank you, Jim. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, kind of synergizing with what Jim and Skylar have said. It seems like one thing that the National Party could do is really identify those energetic individuals and encourage them and give them the resources that they need to succeed at the local level in building sort of regional chapters. I know in Alabama we'd probably have about 3 because we're so spread out and couldn't really do counties. But the national chapter needs to encourage the state chapters, and most importantly, because it's sort of a do or die situation for this party. I mean, as much as we brought in people, I know, through the last national election, you don't start a political party by winning national elections. So the state positions are what's going to make this party, and the best way to encourage that is for the national party to invest in its state chapters.
Thank you, James. Go ahead, Lillian.
Thanks. Well, to me, subsidiarity really starts with this notion that as human beings, we're made to live in relationship with each other, and that we thrive the more that we're able to form bonds of mutual care and love between each other, first in the family and then in our larger communities. And so I think it's really important for us to be encouraging people at the local level to be getting involved in meeting with each other in person, as well as doing things in their community in person. And I think we've been going through this kind of difficult process at the national level of defining who we actually are, and with the platform and that sort of thing. And now we're finishing that up, which is great, because now we can really, I think, focus at the local level. I found, for instance, being involved in Republican politics, that the people who went to the monthly meetings were not necessarily the people who are going out and knocking doors and you know, going and meeting people at libraries and metro stations and all that sort of thing. And that's what we really need to organize as a party. We need to be out there meeting with people in the community, and being involved in helping out there. So, like in Virginia, we have elections every single year. So we already are running a candidate for American Solidarity Party here in Virginia. And so a couple weeks ago, I was out collecting signatures to get her on the ballot. I know in the Maryland, they had this great healthcare forum a few weeks ago as well. And to me, that's really where we should be focusing, is this kind of activism, more than necessarily formal organization at the local level, but actually getting out there and talking and doing things with each other.
Thanks a lot, Lillian. We appreciate your answer. Go ahead, Ephraim.
Well, I'm going to ride along with all of that. The main way we've tried to enact subsidiarity in Kentucky is to organize a party that, alongside of our traditional goals of fielding candidates for office, we also engage in coalition building and resistance organizing with other groups with whom we share some goals. Particularly with the Lexington chapter, we've worked with the NAACP here, and with BUILD, which is an interfaith direct action organization. We've also taken a leadership role in the party as well. We were the initial impetus for the statement on principled resistance, as well as being the first state party to take an open stand for racial justice in regard to the removal of Confederate monuments that were raised as a post-Reconstruction reassertion of white supremacy. And that is also an initiative that's been taken in large measure by the Lexington chapter, working with other groups. As a member of the National Committee, my priorities in this area will be the same: to set up those coalitions with other groups nationwide that pursue social justice goals, to engage with those groups to effectively organize resistance to the twin cultures of death and marginalization that are arrayed against us. And at the same time, we want to encourage our state chapters to take that same kind of action, working on the local level to make this happen.
Thank you very much, Ephraim. Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah. I think that the main thing with subsidiarity is figuring out what should go where. I think the main thing that the NC needs to focus on is doing just the logistical grunt work that nobody wants to touch, which Jim's been doing a great job with. Treasurer is probably the most unpleasant of those tasks. And then providing a vision for how we're going to move forward as a party. But in terms of actually putting people together, we can't do that at the national level. That's got to be local, and state chapters need to feel empowered to do whatever they need to do locally, whether that's local chapters. In Maryland, we haven't done that because the vast majority of the people in our state are within driving distance of any of our events. So we haven't chosen to split off. And different states are going to see different solutions there. I do think that we should give states more autonomy to make decisions. I think that the subcommittee model we're currently using works for now, but that it's something that in the future we're going to have to change from and make them truly autonomous like other parties do. Thank you.
Thanks, Dane. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi. I think subsidiary is about letting the most local part of an organization handle its issues and do so that it can do so effectively and efficiently without burdening others or creating significant social, economic, or political inequities in the organization as a whole. I think that our subsidiarity is held on to is because people at the local level know what's going on in their local level. Oftentimes when others who are not in that area don't understand. And so if I think that those local groups that we should be, I associate with most of my candidates' positions, I think we should be organizing at every state and eventually local level, and that they should be able to determine their issues that they can solve on their own. They should do so in conjunction and getting wisdom from others outside of their area in the national party, as well as other state and local groups. And if they can't do something, they need to send it up the organization so that issue can be handled in that way. So.
Thanks, Chris. The next question is going to be, what is your opinion on cross-endorsing candidates from other political parties? For this one, let's go ahead and start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Many in the past, third parties have used this process of nominating candidates that are in other people's, that other parties are also nominating. And it's been outlawed in many states because it is parties. And I think that in those states that we can do that, it's a good way to get people to be able to vote for the Solidarity Party and still be not wasting their vote, as it's understood, and that candidate would also be supported, that is their default position, apart from their preferred vote for ourselves. To the extent that that can be used, it's only in some states that is still allowable. I think we should. So that is that kind of cross promotion. There obviously are many other kinds of cross promotion. We should be working with other groups that are like-minded on issues. I think we should, especially single issue groups, but also others that have multiple issues that we agree with. And so, yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Dane.
I think that is excellent. And I think, like Chris said, in states where it's legal to double nominate a candidate right on the ballot, we should be doing that. In states where that's not allowed, though, I think we should feel free to endorse those people who fit our values and decline to run candidates for office against them. Prime examples would be somebody like Dan Lipinski, who's in Congress right now. I think we'd be foolish to run anyone in his congressional seat. I think we can also, though, and this is something that's probably a little more controversial within the party, run people within the Republican or Democratic primaries and support them doing that. Supporting people winning those nominations and primaries and potentially allowing our members to do that. A lot of socialist parties have done that within the Democratic Party and almost never run their own candidates. The Democratic Socialists of America have had a decent degree of success doing that strategy, and I think we should try to duplicate that where it makes sense for us. And that's it.
Go ahead, Ephraim.
Well, actually, this is good timing because our state party just now introduced an endorsement for somebody in the Lexington race for urban county government chair or councilman at large coming up in May. So yes, I absolutely think that we should be able to endorse for office those who are running, who meet with our goals, who are advancing our objectives, whether we are running that candidate or not.
Thanks, Ephraim. Go ahead, Lillian.
Yeah, this is actually a perfect place to use the principles of subsidiarity because every state and locality actually has different rules when it comes to being able to endorse, have names on the ballots of parties and that sort of thing. So for instance, in Virginia, we actually don't have party registration, doesn't exist. But there is party affiliation on ballots. A lot of local races are technically nonpartisan. They don't list party affiliation no matter what for things like school board or board of supervisors and things like that. So there's a lot of different opportunities depending on what the particular rules are of the state for us to get involved in cross-endorsing. Because we don't have party registration, we have open primaries. We definitely can organize to support particular candidates within Republican or Democrat primaries when they're run. I personally live in the district of a congresswoman who is, I think, really one of the best Republicans still out there. I definitely we talked about this in the Facebook forum that we really weren't interested in running anyone against her. She's one of the few who has, gone against Trump in terms of, not supporting repeal of the healthcare of the ACA. She has been calling for investigation on him with the Russia issue and all that sort of thing. So, in situations like that, it makes sense for us to, to cross-endorse instead of run people against. Well, in, other situations, it may be better for us to have our own candidate who's running in the center and trying to pull both of the parties towards our positions where we're at differences with them.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, James.
Thanks. As far as endorsing, whether officially or unofficially, depending on the state, I'm all for that. For Republicans and Democrats, absolutely not. I'll be the one to, I guess, be contrary here. That doesn't help us. I don't think in any way. The Democratic Socialists of America may have had luck in getting candidates elected that way. Well, that would be for them running as a primary, but they may have had luck getting candidates elected that way, but I've never heard of them before now, and I imagine a lot of Americans haven't either. So the problem is that it may be a successful way of getting candidates into office, but it doesn't cause any sort of publicity or exposure for the party itself. And I think endorsing a Republican or a Democrat goes in the same direction as, although not as extreme as running a candidate as a Republican or a Democrat. So I'm all for coalition building. I'm all for endorsing other candidates, but not in either of the major parties.
Thank you, James. Go ahead, Jim.
I'd actually take it a step further. I certainly think we should be doing cross-endorsing, but I think a major priority effort of the party, both nationally at the state and at the state levels, should be to work to reform existing state election laws to allow cross-endorsement in all 50 states. There currently are only a handful of states that allow this. Shortly after joining the Solidarity Party, I looked into this issue legally in terms of the state of the law and discovered something I hadn't recalled from before was the Supreme Court actually did face the question once, is it unconstitutional to prohibit parties from doing cross endorsements? And unfortunately, they didn't uphold the constitutional guarantee of being able to run a candidate on two separate party names simultaneously. But there are a handful of states, New York State is a prominent example of one, that allow it. I think if we were able to compel the states to open up the election process so that second parties, non-major parties could do these endorsements, we'd end up with a more open and democratic system, and one which advances the institutional interests of our parties. So that's how I would prioritize that.
Thank you so much, Jim. Next, we're going to go to Kimi, and I understand it might be helpful if I repeated the question for you. So the question was, what is your opinion on cross-endorsing candidates from other parties?
So long as it's allowable in the state of California, I do not have an issue with cross-endorsing candidates in other parties. Personally speaking, I live in a city that is fairly homogenous in terms of its political affiliation, but my city is located within a county that is rather diverse. And what one will find in Riverside County are pockets of Latin Catholics that are fairly progressive, maybe in the city of Palm Springs, but in a place like Marietta, it is strongly Republican. Now, whether or not there is a great likelihood that we'll find a candidate that meets with all of our values, our ASP values, I'm not so sure. But should we find someone that lines up fairly well, then I do not have a problem with cross-endorsing that candidate.
Thank you. Go ahead, Norm.
Sorry, just starting my timer. I think it's a good idea. I think one of the things we need to consider in terms of outreach is the importance of having ballot access, because that's really the most effective way to cross-endorse a candidate, and it redoubles the need to work on ballot access, and especially in those places where it's attainable. The most easily attainable ones should be our immediate goal. I'd like to echo Jim Klein's comments about working towards cross endorsements in every state, because prudentially I think it makes a lot of sense. And to what Kimmy said, I think anyone who can rationally stand for the sanctity of human life, the necessity of social justice, conservation of the environment, and the promotion of a more peaceful world, and for the understanding of solidarity, is somebody who, if there's no direct contradiction there, I think that person would probably fall into someone we could endorse as a prudential matter. I think it would be something that we could consider as something that promotes our party brand, our party name, and something that, while we want to protect, the core items are non-negotiable, but I think we want to protect I think we want to protect the brand by nominating people who stand for those core items, whether or not they're currently on board or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Go ahead, Scholar.
Yes, I'm in favor of cross endorsements. We of course need to be careful to make sure that we don't have state chapters endorsing people who are way out from our principles, like Paul Ryan or Bernie Sanders, or that sort of thing. But the specific members of Congress that Dane mentioned or that Lillian mentioned, I've checked them out, and I think that they are close enough to our principles that if we became viable enough, maybe they would even consider joining us. Or if they strengthen pro-life Democrats or the Republican Solidarity Caucus, that would be on balance a positive thing. Now, I think that we need to move toward running our own candidates as much as possible, but we have to accept that the major parties are likely to be around for a long time, and so there's no legal barrier in really any state to just telling our members, look, in these few races, these are the people that you should vote for, and it educates the major parties as well to show them that this is what we need to see more of from you in order to get our voters.
Thank you very much, Skylar. The next question for you all is going to be, in the interest of European-style coalition building, can local chapters officially endorse local ballot measures? In particular, in regards to potential legislation that they would like to see put forward. Go ahead and start us off, James.
Yeah, I think that there shouldn't be any problem with that. I think that the state chapters are in the best position to know what is consistent or what's good for their state, and as long as it's consistent with the national organization and the actual beliefs of the party, then I don't have any problem with them taking the initiative on that. I think that that's a good idea, especially going off of our earlier, our first question, how to build subsidiarity in the party. That seems like it would be a pretty straightforward position to take. Thanks.
Thank you, James. And go ahead, Lillian.
I agree. Ballot initiatives are really an ideal place for the local and the state chapters to be deciding if and what positions to be taking on those, and sort of aggressively promoting our party by speaking out on those issues, letters to the editor, and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ephraim.
I'm 100% on board with that. Ballot initiatives are exactly what we need to be able to get our name out there. They give us an ability to work for a cause. And it is subsidiarity in itself that we are working on the local level to make things happen.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, I think we absolutely should. I think the only thing we need to be cautious about is that we don't want to take, not so much that any party would take a position contrary to our values, but take one that just is somewhat irrelevant to our values. So if there's something that's highly technical about the state constitution being amended, we should probably stay neutral on that and allow people to vote their own conscience. But otherwise, when it's things that fit our core values, for example, we weren't around a few years ago, but Maryland put gay marriage on the ballot. If we'd been around at that time, we should have made a statement on it opposing it. As a core example of that. That's all.
Thanks, Dane. Go ahead, Chris.
Can you restate the question? It was a little bit jumbled when you stated it before.
Absolutely no problem. In the interest of European-style coalition building, can local chapters officially endorse local ballot measures or legislation from other parties that align with our platform and our values?
I think as long as they do align with our platform and values, I have absolutely no problem with it. I think we should be coalition building. We should be reaching out to other groups that agree with us to do what we can to further the, progress in those directions. I mean, it's really a no-brainer. I think we're all in it for the issues, not to have a special club we can call our own. We're in it to further, life, to further healthcare reform, all these things. These are the reasons why we're in it. So yes, if we have potential partners, we absolutely need to work with them.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Skylar.
Yes, I'm in favor of that. My only caution is that we had an endorsement process for propositions in California in 2016, and it turns out that there was a fairly wide-ranging disagreement on most of them, on marijuana legalization, some environmental ones, some healthcare ones. So my only concern is that those sorts of disagreements could cause major problems in local chapters. But I think as long as the discussions are charitable and fair, and there's a fairly high barrier to endorsing, like possibly a 2/3 or 3/4 majority among the active local members, that we should make sure to endorse some ballot measures and take firm stands on things.
Thanks, Skylar. Go ahead, Norm.
Well, I certainly agree with the consensus that we should be doing something. State chapters are in the best position to comment on local matters. To speak to Skylar's comment, I think he has a point here that I can expand on just a little bit. I think we have to keep in mind when it comes to disagreements that we are a radically centrist party. And if you stand for our 4 core values and subsidiarity and solidarity, particularly solidarity, you can sometimes find people on different sides of the same issue because we're not a cookie cutter. There's one answer for every possible question in the practical world. And we want to make sure that the party welcomes people who are who stand for the core values, even if they disagree on individual policy decisions. So I think we need to be a little bit careful we don't get into a position, as California did, that we stand out and really alienate not only people in our own party, but take positions where you could rationally claim to be part of our core values and be on the other side of the issue. That's where that's the only place I might have some pause. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Go ahead, Kemi.
I agree with what's been said so far, and I think that in the state of California, we're in the process of identifying those things that we can get behind, keeping in mind Skylar's concern of the north-south divide, if you will, and the wide-ranging diversity in the state of California. Which things can we get behind? Which ballot measures can we endorse? And what can we do to move the ASP forward in our state?
Thank you. And go ahead, Jim.
This is a good actual practical nuts and bolts question in a different sense of not only do I think the state chapters should be allowed to do that, I think they should be strongly encouraged to do that. I know from my perspective sitting here in the state of Washington, and I think this is probably true along the West Coast and in much of the West, there's a very libertarian spirit that is central to both the Democratic and the Republican Party. It makes it very hard to run whole life candidates. And I think if the party's going to grow and get its message out, in some regions like Washington State and in California, we're going to have far better success starting by working on these special issues and trying to change public opinion. In Washington State in particular, our chapters put some effort into the death penalty because there's been an effort to try to abolish the death penalty in Washington State. That is a great way for the chapter to build up identification of the party, the branding of the party, and do something very practical which can catalyze the members. Because if you're not going to have candidates able to run for office successfully, if you can impact it on an issue basis, I think that's a great practical measure to take. The only other caution I would say is I think the positions by and large should be consistent with the party platform. I do think the local parties should have the ability to define those, but I'm not a proponent of local chapters defining their own platforms. I think we should have one national platform and everyone should brand off of that.
Thanks, Jim. I do appreciate it. The next question we have is, what is your growth strategy for recruiting and engaging college students and young adults in the party? I would say in particular your growth strategy, but then to that particular category. Let's go ahead and start with Chris.
I think we should advocate. I don't know how many people here agree with the idea of free tuition for college for public colleges, but I do. And if we do agree on those sorts of things, I think we should advocate those positions. I think young people would gravitate toward that. I think that we should advocate. I mean, we should organize on colleges. I know that at UT there's tables on the West Mall that all these organizations have. People walk there, flood there every day, and you can grow a party. I mean, you have literal interaction with people that will follow and will jump on board. I don't know. I think we should use college students to lead those groups, and we can grow the party that way.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Dane.
Anyway, one thing I don't think we should craft our issues or how we present our platform based on how it'll pick up particular demographics. We need to decide what we believe is true and promote that first, and other people are going to decide whether they like that or not. I do actually think that we're a disproportionately young party. You look at the people who are in leadership, and Republicans and Democrats, you aren't going to see as many people under 40 in a leadership role. I do think, though, that to get college chapters going, we need to provide a program for campuses. A few places have had a decent amount of success starting college chapters so far, but it's largely been guesswork for them and chance that they've had that success. We need to provide them resources and a model that somebody can go in on their own onto a campus and be successful with. That's all.
Thanks, Dane. Go ahead, Ephraim.
Well, going along with that, I do think that we should be emphasizing for college students those parts of the platform that speak to them. I think bringing forth things about free tuition or even just loan reform are going to be a real help. But in the actual organization of college chapters, I'm thinking that what we need to do is work on identifying and promoting student leaders. And one of the ways to do that is to identify college and faculty staff among our memberships and bring them into that role as the people who are basically headhunting on colleges to get us college organizations.
Thank you, Ephraim. Go ahead, Lillian.
Well, I am a little bit farther away from the college scene than people often assume. It's actually been 20 years since I graduated from college. You know, we have a ton of members who are still college students or college professors. So we do have a lot of inroads there. I think that one thing that we can do to better organize younger people is to in our marketing, I think we need to become a lot more visual, memes and other things like that, where we have compelling, quick visual representations of the issues and the positions that are important to us. And those are being shared on, you know, Twitter and Snapchat and all those sorts of things that I don't even use, and I don't really understand how to use them. But what we need to do is be engaging people who are experts and really good at using those social media platforms. They're particularly popular with younger people today, so that they know about us. And then once they engage with us online through social media, then we need to reach out in person and give them the tools that they need to actually start doing in-person organizing on their campuses and that sort of thing.
Thanks, Lillian. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I mean, sort of going off of what Dane said, I agreed with a lot of that. It's, you know, we are members of this party because we believe in line with what the party believes, and not and it just seems like sometimes there's a misguided tendency to treat college students who are adults like they're a separate species that can't just be engaged with the same that you would engage with anybody else. I agree that the social media and meme aspect is a big component of a lot of younger people's lives. But we just have to be careful how we approach that, because the tendency is to appeal to youth in a way that isn't organic. And I feel like a lot of young people can see that coming from a mile away. And I told myself I wasn't going to bring it up, but the Catholic Church gets brought up a lot in this party. And wherever you see a sort of insincere Catholic youth group, you see a dead church. And so my caution would just be to avoid going after it. Really, it would be just like with our state chapters. We should be identifying college students who are energized about the platform and then enable them to best make their college chapters, because they're going to have a better idea of how to do that than an older person who doesn't have as much of ties to their culture. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
I'm going to provide an answer on this that's slightly contrarian, although I'd have to echo what James just said in terms of recognizing that young people aren't a different form of species. They're really something that we should be doing outreach just like they're any other member of the party. For those of us who have ever been involved in a political campaign in any role, in a leadership capacity or as a candidate, one of the things you recognize is you're going to get advice from a lot of people about what you ought to do. And it's the same as trying to get a national party off the ground. Should we be making an effort to set up campus chapters? Certainly. Should it be one of our highest priorities? I candidly do not believe so. I think building strong campus chapters is something that would probably be in our 5 to 10 year plan. I believe our plan of the next 2 years is growing membership across the board, finding ways to add members. Now, part of that can and should be some campus outreach, not just to the students, but also to the faculty. Because on some of those faculty, particularly some of the Catholic and Christian colleges, you are going to see some of the faculty perhaps becoming full proponents, strong proponents of our party. There's one other practical thing I think you could do to build our campus chapters, and that would be to follow my lead where I've endorsed Kimmy, elect Kimmy to the national party and put her in charge of communications and social media, because I think she's going to be one of the people that's going to help us find a way to reach those young people effectively.
Thank you, Jim. Speaking of, go ahead, Kimmy.
Well, I agree that the platform should not be changed to meet certain demographics. However, we must understand that the same message can be contextualized depending on a person's demographic, particularly their life stage. I too am with Lillian. I graduated from college 20 years ago, but I do know how important effective visual collateral is for younger people. Video collateral, print collateral. These are things that we're going to have to pay attention to if we're going to reach that demographic, not with a different message, but with points of resonance that connect with their particular group.
Thank you. Go ahead, Norm.
Well, in the context that I think there's a whole slew of people who ought to be with us that simply they don't know they ought to be with us yet. I think college students and college faculty certainly fit in that group. I mean, you're talking about a group that can be some of the most political people, have the highest level of interests. They can be some of the most valuable people to have in the party. And I think we have a message that would really, I think, appeal to them, our core principles. I think one of the things that college students would respond to is the notion that we offer an alternative to the American political narrative. Right now, the American political narrative is essentially that attacking works and that there's that word again, solidarity is for losers. I mean, I think we have a rational response to that I think would be very appealing. I mean, right now we're a lot closer to Nietzschean politics than we are to Jeffersonian politics. I think if we present this message in a positive way, in a way that college students would and college faculty would understand that they have, here's an opportunity for them to participate in the process without all of the negative stuff that comes from the standard operating procedures of the political parties. I think that it's really a great opportunity for us. Thanks.
Thanks, Norm. And go ahead, Skylar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, what Norm said was just great about the type of narrative that we need to bring to college chapters. Generally, although I'm the head of the student outreach currently, I think that making that the responsibility of state chapters is probably the best way to go. Probably recruiting student leaders is best done through the pro-life movement. It's not that other issues aren't important, but I think getting the pro-life student leaders onto our side is probably going to bring more student leaders in the short term than any other strategy. I would also caution against relying on college faculty too much. There are a lot of faculty in the party, myself included actually, and I think a lot of us are nervous about organizing our own campuses. And it won't work anyway unless we have a couple of enthusiastic students coming on board.
Thank you very much, Skylar. For a party that calls itself the Solidarity Party, I know that we're drawing in factions from a lot of different places. We have a lot of disgruntled Republicans, a lot of disgruntled Democrats. I think we even have a few former libertarians in the party. What would your strategy be for keeping this fledgling party from fracturing or splintering apart? Let's go ahead and start this with Norm.
Well, thanks. I've said elsewhere that I think we can be the party of people, of supporters of Bernie Sanders and Paul Ryan, to mention two names that were mentioned earlier, and also two names of people who use our party vocabulary more than the people who ran for the office of the President of the United States last November. I think we have an appeal to a wide variety of possible supporters who support our four core principles underneath the blanket of solidarity. Because if we are a radically, if we practice radical solidarity, that is the key to solidarity. Quickly is. Your concern is my concern. If it doesn't matter whether you're an enemy or a friend. It's also, your injury is my injury. It's a real personal understanding. It's not a systems understanding of how we deal with matters. So, I would look to use solidarity as a way to keep our core principles front and center, even with people who might not agree on every last policy issue, that they would find a good home in the American Solidarity Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Go ahead, Dane.
I think that a lot of people can get too concerned, and I'll admit that I'm sometimes that person, about specific issues and making sure they get prioritized within the party. The best way to make sure people from different factions feel welcome is to make sure that people from those different factions have a seat at the table. We're not going to be able to paper over those divisions. They're real. I joined last year, but looking at how people who have been members since 2011 and 2012 disagree, they've always been with us and they always will. I think both at leadership on the national committee and within every state chapter, we need to have people who represent those different views have a seat at the table so that nobody feels excluded from this party.
Thank you, Dane. Go ahead, Skylar.
I think the best way to kind of unite all the different factions is by making sure that we recruit candidates who have devotion to our core principles, but who also have a diversity of views. So, for example, you'll see a lot more from the campaigns of Monica Solar for New Jersey legislature, and Elenita Helmer for Virginia legislature. And I think you'll see that Monica wants us to make sure that we keep our message of subsidiarity and localism as much as possible. And Helmer is making sure that we focus on our justice for immigrants and making sure that we have a strong social safety net. So it's not so much a disagreement between those two, but more of a diversity in what we emphasize. To make sure that there is a message that candidates of a diverse point of views, but common principles are what we can get behind.
Thanks, Skylar. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think the best way we can work to reduce division and allow more people to embrace our party is to keep our core values front and center, and to keep the list of required beliefs or required things to advocate for very short. And so that we allow diversity for candidates, for just regular members, people that join with us. They see the core values, they agree with the core values. Yeah, I mean, keep the list short, essentially, of essential required views. We can only be a larger party if we have a short list, basically.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Kimmy.
I agree with what's been said. I think that to affirm, I mean, not just affirm, but to very intentional about reiterating our core values and principles and making sure that all know that all who affirm these values and principles are indeed welcome. I think this is one of the things I've gained from doing faith-based community development work. It requires ecumenical working. It requires working across doctrinal lines. For me, personally speaking, I've been working in Christian community development, and often people have come from all across the Christian spectrum. But we understand that there's a job to be done. There are values that we share in common and that we hold dear, and we move forward with what's best for the development of the community that we're working in. And I think those same ideas and strategies can be applied here to make sure that all know that as long as they affirm our core values and principles, they are indeed welcome in the American Solidarity Party.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lillian.
Yeah, I particularly like some of the things that Norm and Chris had to say. I think we are the American Solidarity Party, so we need to be rooting everything that we do in solidarity, and that means preferential option for the poor. That means understanding each other. That it means walking with each other and on a personal level and looking at issues from a personal perspective, and speaking the truth in love when sometimes some of these arguments get out of control and we're not really respecting the dignity of the human person and how we're talking with them. So I think it's important to keep coming back to that principle. And to keep coming back to those 4 core principles of the dignity, of the sanctity of human life, the necessity for social justice, care for the environment, and the possibility of a more peaceful world, and just keep reminding people to come back to grounding ourselves in those core principles, and then also focusing on growing the party and continuing to attract people who agree with us on these principles. And I think sometimes factions are more obvious, actually, the smaller you are. So the bigger you are, I think that people have joined by attraction, and so they're a little bit less likely to be having conflict with each other.
Thank you, Lillian. Go ahead, Jim.
This is a another important question, because I think we've all seen within our party there's a lot of thoughts and approaches to issues, and it's been a real eye-opener to me during my time in the party to see approaches to public policy that I hadn't given much consideration, and it's really broadened my thinking on a number of issues. If we're going to be successful in keeping the party from fracturing, there's some key things I think we need to do. One is what Lillian just mentioned, is starting first with ourselves, seeing what we can do to maintain civility and respect and dialogue, and understand that we can agree disagreeably. The next thing we need to do, which I believe we have done, if we can close in on the convention, is to build a platform that attracts a broad a range of thinking and a broad group. And I think our new platform that has altered some of the jargon and concepts that were foreign to a lot of people that maybe weren't as clearly grounded in solid public policy. A lot of those have been addressed in the new platform in a very productive way. We need to maintain a broad party. The Pelican is only going to fly if it's got both a right wing and a left wing. We need to remember we're a center-right party and a center-left party, and we also have people that don't fit neatly into any of those boxes. On the other hand, we don't want to become such a big tent party that we get completely watered down in a way that violates those core principles. As Lily mentioned, I think Lillian mentioned, in the forefront should be the concept of solidarity. And I think we need to be really clear. We support whole life, and that means, you know, the members should be supporting restrictions on abortion and improving the quality of life. And I also think on economics, we should be really clear. We're for solidarity, social justice economics, not libertarian sorts of approaches.
Thanks, Jim. And go ahead, James.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Jim and some of the others have just said. You know, there's and tying in with the local state ballot issue discussion earlier, you know, we need to identify places where members can reasonably agree, and then identify places where members cannot reasonably disagree. Since I'm not the first person to bring it up, luckily, going off of a religious analogy, you know, the Orthodox Church, for instance, tends to have less dogma than other Christian groups, but it takes those dogmas very seriously. And so I think that as a party, we would be well served in following that sort of model, is that there's areas where we can have a variety of opinions, but there's some things that just, if that doesn't fly, then you may need to look at other options as a party. Because the danger is obviously being too specialized so that we never get any members, but then on the other hand, if we are too broad, then you have to explain to me why I shouldn't just be a Democrat or Republican, because, you know, that I think a lot of people came to this party precisely so that they didn't have to compromise as much. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we all get what we want all the time, but we definitely need to look at what specifically must be required of all of our members, even if it's just a couple different things, and always enforce that, because otherwise, like Jim was saying, you know, it just becomes a self-defeating enterprise. Thanks.
I want to thank you all. We've had such a wonderful conversation here today. For those of you who are in our audience and might have been wondering where was the sniping, bickering, back and forth, for the most part, we don't have it in this party. We really are a party of solidarity. But to see the candidates interacting with one another more and directly addressing each other's questions, please do register on our forums. I'll try to get a link put in the description of the video as soon as possible. All the candidates are there. All the other existing party leaders are there, able to respond and ask each other's questions. I just want to say thank you to this great batch of candidates. Thank you all for the time that you have sacrificed to run for the NC. Thank you for your willingness for all the much more time you will spend if you actually win a seat on the NC. That's National Committee for the Unaffiliated. And just thank you all for watching and for your interest in the Solidarity Party. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. God bless the Solidarity Party, and God bless America.